Your phone buzzes with a message that immediately tightens your chest. A demand from work intrudes on your evening, or a careless comment from a relative chips away at your confidence. In these moments, it feels like your peace is under siege. The ancient Stoic teacher Epictetus offered a powerful reminder. He said that our own opinions, pursuits, desires, and aversions are within our power, while our body, our property, our reputation, and our public roles are not. This is the starting line for a different way of living. This video explores a set of specific Stoic mental tools, what we will call filtering methods, that act as a deliberate defense for your inner peace and self-respect. We will walk through practical skills like the Discipline of Assent, which teaches you to question your first reactive thought, the view from above, which helps put personal concerns into a wider perspective, and Amor, Fati, the profound practice of accepting whatever unfolds. By the end, you will have a clear and actionable framework to protect your mind from outside noise and strengthen your sense of worth from within. How did a philosophy from 2,000 years ago develop such precise tools for modern psychological resilience? And what is the single most important filter you can start using today to change how you experience pressure and criticism? At the heart of Stoic resilience is a simple but profound practice, filtering. This is the core mechanism of the dichotomy of control you heard about earlier. It is the active, mental process of evaluating every external event before you permit it to influence your emotions or self-worth. The very first line of Epictetus's handbook, the Enchiridion, makes this distinction its foundation. He begins not with a complex theory, but with this immediate and practical separation of what is within our power and what is not. Think of this filter as a mental sieve. When information, a comment, or a demand comes your way, you consciously pour it through this sieve. What passes through, what is truly up to you, is your judgment, your impulse, your desire, your aversion. These are the only things you have complete command over. Everything else, from another person's opinion to a traffic jam, gets caught in the sieve and is recognized as an external, something outside your direct control. For instance, imagine you open an email and feel a surge of frustration at its tone. The unfiltered reaction is to fire back a heated reply, but applying the Stoic filter means pausing. You ask yourself, is the content of this email up to me? No, the sender's attitude is not up to me. Is my judgment of this email and my subsequent action up to me? Absolutely, that is the only part that remains in your hands. What is one external event from today that you allowed to disturb your peace, and how could this simple act of filtering have changed your response? This initial sorting is the first and most critical defense for your mind. What if your first thought about a situation was not a command, but merely a suggestion? This is the essence of the Stoic discipline of assent, your mind's first and most vital line of defense. It is the practice of creating a crucial pause between an external event and your internal reaction, a moment where you consciously choose whether to endorse the initial impression that arises. Think of that first impression as a notification on your screen. It flashes with a headline, often a negative or alarming one. The untrained mind clicks accept immediately, downloading the story and all its emotional baggage. The disciplined mind, however, simply reads the headline and asks, is this true? Is this useful? Is this within my control? Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. This is that realization in action. It is how you build an internal boundary, a filter that stops you from automatically accepting external criticism or drama as your own truth. Imagine a scenario where a colleague sends you feedback that feels unfairly harsh. Your initial impression, that notification, might suggest they think you are not performing well. This feels like a challenge. Without the discipline of assent, you might immediately agree with that story. You would feel defensive, upset, and your entire day could be thrown off course. But with this filter engaged, you catch the impression. You note the feeling of discomfort, but you do not grant it your approval. You look at the feedback and separate the actual content from the tone. You ask, is there anything here I can use to improve which is within my control? And is their opinion of me ultimately within my control? No, it is not. By withholding your assent from the initial, exaggerated interpretation, you drain the event of its power to define your self-worth. Your peace remains your own. Can you recall a time when your initial impression of an event was completely wrong? And how did that realization change your relationship with your own thoughts? The Stoics believed each of us possesses an unassailable inner fortress. This is the powerful metaphor of the inner citadel, a concept that builds directly upon the filtering practices we just explored. It is not a physical place, but a protected space within your own mind, a sanctuary for your core values and your capacity for reasoned judgment. Building this citadel is not an act of isolation from the world. It is the deliberate creation of a calm center from which you can engage with the world on your own terms, without being overrun by it. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who faced endless political turmoil and personal hardship, constantly returned to this idea in his private writings. He reminded himself to retreat into the little territory within yourself, a place of simplicity and serenity that is always available. This is the seat of your self-worth, the part of you that remains intact and valuable regardless of external praise or criticism. Think of it like your own secure home. The weather outside might be chaotic, with storms of demanding emails and harsh words, but inside your home you are safe. You decide who and what you let across the threshold. The foundation of this home is built not on concrete, but on the principles you choose to live by. These are your core values, the non-negotiable standards that define your character. When you know what those values are, you have a clear blueprint for your inner citadel. What three values form the foundation of your own inner citadel? Identifying them is the first step in building walls that protect your peace without imprisoning your spirit. Your current challenge feels like the only thing in the world, a dense fog that obscures everything else. But what if you could float above that fog for just a moment? The Stoics developed a mental exercise for precisely this purpose, known as the view from above. This is a conscious shift in perspective, a deliberate act of zooming out from your immediate emotional landscape to see your life from a vast, almost cosmic vantage point. It is a filter that shrinks personal troubles down to their true size, revealing that very few events are genuinely targeted at you. Marcus Aurelius regularly practiced this, reminding himself to frequently consider the connection of all things in the universe and their relation to one another. He would reflect on the great expanse of time, seeing his own brief life as but a single turn in a much longer story. He noted how all the bustling drama of human life, the anxieties and triumphs, are just tiny specks in the grand sweep of existence. This is not meant to diminish your experience, but to free you from its overwhelming weight. To practice this, take a current stressor. Perhaps it is a disagreement with a friend that is consuming your thoughts. Now, gently pull your perspective upward. See yourself in the room, then see your street from above, your city, your country. Continue until you are picturing the planet itself, a beautiful blue sphere spinning in the immense quiet of space. From here, that disagreement, while real, is no longer the center of the universe. It is one small event in a vast network of lives and moments. This distance creates emotional insulation, protecting your inner boundaries by helping you see that the world is not happening to you, it is simply happening. When you look at your current challenge from a year in the future, what part of it will truly matter to the person you are becoming? There is a profound difference between fearing the future and preparing for it. The Stoic practice of Premeditatio Malorum, often translated as the Premeditation of Troubles, is a powerful form of this preparation. This is not about expecting the worst or cultivating pessimism. It is a deliberate exercise in psychological readiness, a way to strengthen your inner foundations before they are ever tested. Seneca captured the essence of this when he wrote, "The person who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." By mentally rehearsing potential challenges, you are not inviting them. You are building a resilience to their emotional impact. Think of it like a fire drill. You do not conduct a drill because you want a fire to happen. You do it so that if smoke ever fills the hallway, your body knows the path to safety and panic does not seize control. Premeditatio Malorum is a fire drill for your mind. Consider a difficult conversation you have been putting off. The unfiltered approach is to avoid thinking about it, hoping it resolves itself, all while a low hum of anxiety drains your energy. The Stoic approach is to sit quietly and consciously walk through the scenario. What if the other person reacts with frustration? What if they do not fully understand my concerns? By facing these possibilities in your mind, you disarm their power to surprise you. More importantly, you pre-decide your own anchored response. You reaffirm that your self-worth is not tied to their reaction. Your calm, reasoned reply is what remains within your control. This rehearsal transforms a potential emotional disruption into a manageable interaction. It preserves your inner balance because you have already walked through the event in the safety of your own thoughts. What is one potential challenge you are quietly avoiding, and what is a single, Stoic-aligned action you could commit to taking if it occurred? Marcus Aurelius wrote that the impediment to action advances action. This statement seems like a contradiction until you apply the Stoic filter of acceptance. This is the art of acquiescence, a mental shift where you stop fighting the reality of your situation and start working with it. The obstacle itself becomes the very thing that moves you forward. This filter transforms external challenges, including difficult individuals, into the raw material for building your character and proving your resilience to yourself. Epictetus offered clear guidance on this, reminding us that when we encounter another person who is challenging, we are meeting an opportunity for patience. We are not seeing an enemy, but a chance to practice the very virtue we wish to embody. Your self-worth grows not when everything is easy, but when you navigate difficulty with grace and see your own capacity to endure and adapt. Imagine a critical project at work is suddenly delayed by forces outside your control. The unfiltered reaction is frustration, seeing the delay as a setback that ruins your timeline. But with the Stoic filter engaged, you pause and reframe. You accept the reality of the delay. This is now the situation. Then you ask, how does this impediment advance the action? It provides unexpected time. This time becomes a gift, an opportunity to refine your plan, to strengthen a weak point you had overlooked, or simply to practice the virtue of patience and flexibility. The obstacle did not block your path, it revealed a better one. Identify one current obstacle in your life. How can you actively accept its reality and use its presence to your advantage, turning its weight into your momentum? Every boundary you build begins with a single, sharp line. The dichotomy of control is that ultimate line, the foundational filter that clarifies where your responsibility ends and the world's chaos begins. It is the clearest division we can possibly draw for our precious mental energy, a tool that transforms vague anxiety into focused action. This is not a complex philosophy to be debated, but a practical sieve for daily experience. Your own opinions, your judgments, your desires, and your aversions, these are the only things truly within your command. Everything else, from another person's actions to your reputation, from a past event to a future outcome, resides firmly in the realm of the external, the not up to you. Applying this filter consistently is the ultimate act of setting a personal boundary, because it protects your inner world from being overtaken by events you cannot direct. Epictetus put it with stunning simplicity in the Enchiridion, stating that we must make the best use of what is in our power and treat the rest in accordance with its nature. Your reaction is yours, the traffic jam is not. You cannot control the gridlock that makes you late, but you have absolute authority over whether you spend that time simmering with frustration or listening to an audiobook, using the delay as an unexpected pocket of peace. This is where your power lies. Make a quick list. What are 3 things you worried about today that were ultimately outside your control? Our deepest frustrations often trace back to a simple mismatch. We intensely desire outcomes we cannot guarantee, and we desperately try to avoid experiences we cannot ultimately control. The Stoics identified this as the primary source of our emotional turmoil, and they devised a powerful filtering system for our very wants and fears. This is the practice of aligning your desires and aversions with what is truly good and what is truly up to you. Epictetus offered a stark and liberating formula. He said, when you set your heart on one of the things which is not your own, you inevitably meet with misfortune. He was pointing to a radical idea. True freedom comes from only desiring what you can certainly achieve, your own virtue, and only being averse to what you can certainly avoid, your own poor choices. Your self-worth then becomes unshakable because it is no longer tied to the fickle approval of the outside world. Consider the modern desire for social media validation. You post a carefully crafted photo and you hope for a flood of likes and positive comments. This outcome, however, is entirely outside your control. You cannot force people to engage. If you filter this desire through the Stoic lens, you ask a different question. Instead of wanting the likes, you shift your desire to acting with integrity. You focus on posting something that is authentic and true to your values, an action that is completely within your power. Whether the algorithm favors it or not becomes irrelevant to your sense of accomplishment. Your worth was affirmed in the act of creation itself, not in the public's reaction. What is one thing you intensely desire that, if you did not get it, would not diminish your core worth as a person? Asking this question begins to reroute your emotional energy inward, to the only place where your value is truly built and maintained. Stoics do not merely wait for hardship to arrive. They actively train for it. This is the purpose behind the practice of voluntary discomfort, a deliberate method for tempering your inner boundaries against life's inevitable challenges. By occasionally choosing simplicity or embracing a minor hardship, you conduct a crucial stress test on your own peace of mind. You prove to yourself, through direct experience, that your sense of worth and contentment is not held hostage by external comfort. Seneca powerfully advised that we should periodically practice living with less, not to suffer, but to prove to ourselves that those things we fear losing are not the true source of our strength. He suggested that we might sometimes adopt the diet of someone with little, wear simple clothing, and ask ourselves, is this really the condition I so feared? The goal is not to live in perpetual hardship, but to remove the sting from the idea of it. A modern, gentle equivalent could be a voluntary fast from social media for a single day. The initial impulse is to check your phone, to seek that external validation or distraction. By consciously choosing to forego that comfort, you are building a powerful mental muscle. You are reinforcing the boundary that separates your inner calm from the digital noise of the world. You discover that your stability remains intact even without that constant input. This small act of refusal strengthens your resolve for when larger, involuntary challenges inevitably appear. What is one small comfort you could voluntarily go without this week to remind yourself of your inner strength? What if you could not just accept but genuinely love everything that happens to you? This is the heart of Amor Fati, the love of fate, the ultimate Stoic filter for your inner world. It is the final, most profound shift from resisting reality to embracing it, not as a burden, but as the essential material you need to build your character. This is far from passive resignation. It is an active, creative stance toward life, where every event, especially the difficult ones, becomes a necessary part of your story. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, deeply inspired by Stoic thought, later captured this spirit perfectly when he wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity." This mindset fundamentally changes how you experience boundary challenges or personal setbacks. An unkind remark, a professional rejection, these no longer feel like targeted attacks on your worth. They begin to feel like specific and even welcome challenges designed to strengthen a particular part of you, your patience, your resilience, or your clarity. I once spent months preparing for a role I was certain I was meant to have. When the rejection letter arrived, it felt deeply personal. I struggled with the outcome for a long time. Yet that closed door forced me to look in a different direction, leading me to a path I would never have considered otherwise, one that was far more aligned with my true strengths. That perceived setback was not an ending. It was the necessary redirection I needed to find my real beginning. Amor Fati asks you to trust the process of your own life, to believe that every piece of the puzzle, even the jagged, uncomfortable ones, is required to complete the picture. Can you find one thing in your own past that you deeply struggled with at the time, but that ultimately made you stronger, wiser, or set you on a better path? Your boundaries are not a fortress to hide within, but a set of clear principles that guide how you step out into the world. This is where the discipline of action transforms your filtered thoughts into purposeful engagement. It is the final, crucial step where you ensure your external behavior aligns with your internal values, moving you from reactive impulse to considered contribution. Marcus Aurelius offered a powerful filter for any action when he advised, "Let every act be done as if it were the last of your life." This is not a call for drama, but for profound presence and integrity. It asks, is this action right now worthy of being your final statement on the matter? Are you acting for the common good with virtue, or are you merely reacting to a provocation? This practice builds deep self-worth because it affirms that your impact on the world is a direct reflection of your chosen character. Imagine receiving criticism that feels deeply unfair. The reactive path is to snap back with a sharp retort, a move that may feel victorious in the moment but often escalates tension and erodes your own peace. The disciplined path requires a pause. You filter the impulse through your principles. You ask, does a harsh reply serve a constructive purpose? Does it align with my value of understanding, or is it just an emotional release? Choosing to respond with calm, principled clarity, perhaps by seeking to understand the other perspective or simply stating your position without malice, becomes an action of strength. It protects your boundary by demonstrating that your behavior cannot be hijacked by another's tone. In your next interaction, how can you pause to ensure your action serves a purpose beyond mere reaction? Our thoughts have a way of masquerading as absolute truth. We do not merely think a critical idea, we fuse with it, becoming the thought itself. "I am not good enough" shifts from a passing mental event to a core identity, and our emotional boundaries soften under its pressure. A powerful modern technique, deeply aligned with the Stoic discipline of assent, is cognitive distancing. This is the simple act of mentally labeling your thoughts to create a crucial space between you and them. Instead of "I am a failure," you learn to observe, "I am having the thought that I am a failure." This small shift in language is a monumental shift in power. You are no longer the thought, you are the observer of the thought. This process of labeling eases the emotional charge, allowing you to see the idea as a temporary visitor in your mind, not its permanent ruler. This principle is a cornerstone of cognitive behavioral therapy, a field that explicitly acknowledges its philosophical debt to Stoic practices. Imagine you are about to give a presentation and a wave of concern arrives with the thought, "You are going to embarrass yourself." The unfiltered reaction is to believe it, to feel your heart race and your confidence fade. But with cognitive distancing, you pause and label it. You note, "I am having the thought that I will embarrass myself." By naming it, you hold it at a gentle distance. You can then examine it with curiosity rather than fear, asking the Stoic question, "Is this a useful or accurate assessment? Or is it just a story my mind is telling me?" This mental space becomes a protected boundary, preventing the internal critic from taking over. What is one recurring unhelpful thought you can practice mentally labeling and observing today, simply watching it pass by like a cloud without letting it define your sky? That narrow space between an event and your reaction is where your true power resides. It is the critical moment when you decide whether to be swept away by an impulse or to stand firm on the ground of your principles. This deliberate hesitation, what we can call the Stoic pause, is the ultimate microfilter. It is the practical, breathing expression of every Stoic method we have explored, the split second where you consciously choose to engage your inner citadel rather than your raw nerves. Epictetus offered clear guidance on this, reminding us to be slow to fall into anger, for anger is not a mark of strength but a sign that our boundaries have been challenged. This pause is the physical act of reinforcing those boundaries, creating a buffer zone for your mind. Imagine your phone lights up with a message from a colleague, its tone immediately putting you on the defensive. Your fingers itch to type a sharp reply to defend yourself in the heat of the moment, but instead you institute the Stoic pause. You place the phone face down and you take one single conscious breath. In that brief stillness, you create the space to apply your filters. You remember the dichotomy of control, recognizing that their words are an external, but your composed response is wholly your own. You engage the discipline of assent, questioning whether your initial interpretation is the only possible one. That one breath allows your higher reasoning to catch up with your primal reaction. The message you eventually send is measured, clear, and free of the emotional charge that could have escalated the situation. You protected your peace and your professional relationship with a simple, intentional delay. What one personal trigger would most benefit from you instituting a mandatory Stoic pause, transforming a moment of potential conflict into an opportunity for grounded strength? Just as we build filters for our own thoughts, we must also build them for the world we inhabit. The people we allow into our inner circle create the very atmosphere we breathe, and the Stoics understood this as an essential external boundary. While you cannot control another person's character, you hold absolute authority over whom you invite to share your time and attention. This choice is one of the most powerful expressions of self-respect. In his letters, Seneca wrote extensively about the deep influence of our companions, advising us to carefully consider who we permit to shape our inner lives. He suggested that we should live with those who will help us improve, because we are naturally drawn to adopt the habits and spirit of those we associate with most closely. This is not about avoiding people, but about consciously curating an environment that supports your growth rather than constantly testing your peace. Think of a colleague who often shares frustration and doubt, turning every conversation toward what is difficult. Spending time with them can feel like trying to move forward while carrying a heavy weight. Deciding to limit those interactions is not an act of rudeness. It is a proactive filter for your mental space. It is choosing to protect the calm you have worked so hard to build. Who in your life energizes and supports your best self, and who often leaves you feeling tired? What is one small step you can take based on this reflection? We often crave more because we forget the value of what we already hold. Negative visualization is the deliberate practice of remembering. It is a specific aspect of Premeditatio Malorum that shifts your focus from fearing future changes to appreciating present gifts, directly strengthening your contentment and, by extension, your self-worth. By mentally subtracting the good things in your life, you break the exhausting cycle of seeking external approval. You realize your foundation is already here. Seneca beautifully captured this when he advised us to remind ourselves that we should love all our dear ones, but always with the thought that we have no promise that we may keep them forever. He was not promoting fear, but a profound and active gratitude. He meant to value the presence of a friend or your well-being by occasionally imagining life without it, so that you never take it for granted. To practice this, guide your mind through a simple exercise. Imagine your phone, that constant portal to connection and information, is gone for a day. Not just misplaced, but truly lost. Feel that initial jolt of inconvenience, the minor pause of being disconnected. Then, let that feeling transform into a recognition of its utility, the convenience you rely on every single day without a second thought. This mental subtraction renews the object's value, not because you acquired a new one, but because you consciously acknowledge the one you have. Your sense of worth becomes anchored in gratitude for the present, not in the anxious pursuit of the next possession. What is one thing you take for granted that, if lost, would profoundly impact you? Take a quiet moment now to truly feel gratitude for its presence in your life. Our words quietly build the walls of our reality. The language we use to describe an event is the final filter, the one that determines whether we see a situation clearly or through a fog of our own judgments. This is the practical power of shifting from judgmental language to descriptive, factual language. When you declare a situation a complete disaster, you are not just describing it, you are placing a heavy, emotional label upon it. That label then dictates your entire response, blurring the boundary between the event itself and your story about the event. Epictetus laid the foundation for this when he stated that it is not things that upset us, but our judgments about things. A project deadline being moved is a simple fact. The story that this is a disaster and reflects poorly on you is the judgment that causes the struggle. The discipline of assent asks you to catch that judgment before you speak it, even internally. By consciously choosing to describe the facts, you create a necessary distance. You reclaim the space between what happened and what you decide it means. Imagine receiving personal feedback. The judgmental filter immediately suggests, "I am a failure." This statement is a conclusion about your entire worth, but the descriptive filter observes only the facts. The feedback noted that the report contained 2 statistical errors and was submitted after the agreed time. This neutral description is what actually happened. It is specific, manageable, and most importantly, it does not define you. It describes a set of circumstances that you now have the power to address if you choose. Your self-worth remains intact because it was never truly on the line. Only a particular performance was. This linguistic shift is how you build clearer boundaries with the events of your life, seeing them for what they are, not for the stories we sometimes attach to them. What is one current frustration you can practice rephrasing right now, from a sweeping judgment into a simple, neutral description? The person who challenges your patience is not an antagonist in your story, but the lead character in their own. They are navigating life with the same limited vision and personal struggles that you are, a truth that forms the core of the Stoic universal perspective. This mental filter asks you to see every individual as a fellow human being, bound to you by a shared, often difficult journey. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly returned to this idea in his Meditations, writing that we are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of the upper and lower teeth. To act against one another, then, is contrary to nature. When you recognize this fundamental kinship, the sharp edges of a perceived personal attack begin to soften. It becomes far less about you and far more about the other person's inner world. That brief email from a manager or the weary tone from a family member is rarely a calculated strike against your worth. It is far more likely the overflow of their own private frustration, worry, or fatigue. Understanding this does not mean you excuse poor behavior, but it completely changes how you receive it. You stop absorbing their emotional state as your own. This shift is what allows for both firmer and kinder boundaries. You can hold your ground with compassion, responding to their need without accepting their negativity. Picture a service agent who speaks to you with unwarranted irritation. The unfiltered reaction is to feel targeted and to respond in kind. But applying the universal perspective, you might consider that this person has likely been on the receiving end of complaints all day, or perhaps they are carrying a personal concern that has nothing to do with you. This does not make their tone acceptable, but it recontextualizes it. Your boundary remains. You can still conclude the interaction calmly and firmly, but your inner peace is protected because you have not taken the behavior personally. It was a reflection of their storm, not a verdict on your value. Bring to mind someone whose actions recently upset you. Can you reframe their behavior not as a targeted attack, but as an outward expression of their own inner state, a signal of something they themselves are carrying? If you knew your time was limited, what would you immediately stop tolerating? This is the stark and clarifying question at the heart of Memento Mori, the Stoic practice of remembering our own finite nature. Far from a grim fixation, this contemplation acts as an urgent filter for your time and energy, cutting through the noise of daily life to reveal what holds genuine weight. It compels you to set stronger boundaries not out of harshness, but from a deep respect for the life you have been given. Seneca wrote in his letters that life is long if you know how to use it, yet we often speak of its shortness. He observed that we are not given a short life, but we make it so by spending time on things that do not matter. Memento Mori is the tool that corrects this, shifting your focus from trivial worries and draining obligations toward the relationships and pursuits that truly define your existence. This practice directly affirms your self-worth, because when you honor your limited time, you are declaring that your life is too valuable to be spent on distractions. To apply this, open your calendar for the upcoming week. Review each commitment and ask yourself, if my time were truly precious, would this be how I choose to spend it? Identify one low-priority engagement, one recurring drain on your energy that you can consciously eliminate. This single act is a powerful statement of self-respect. What is one thing you would immediately stop doing if you fully embraced the truth of Memento Mori? We commit to a goal with all our energy, only to feel our confidence waver when the result does not match our hope. The Stoics offered a subtle but powerful mental tool to prevent this exact kind of letdown, known as the reserve clause. This is the practice of adding a silent, internal phrase to every intention you set, a simple acknowledgement that, fate permitting, guides your actions without guaranteeing their ends. You can pour your absolute best effort into a pursuit while simultaneously accepting that the final outcome rests in the hands of forces beyond your direct command. This filter is your primary defense against the disappointment of unmet expectations, a major source of shaken self-worth. It allows you to try your best without staking your entire happiness on a result you cannot fully control. Epictetus taught his students to undertake nothing without a reserve clause, advising them to say within themselves, "I will sail across the ocean if nothing prevents me." He was not promoting doubt, but a profound realism that separates your worthy effort from the world's unpredictable response. Consider the process of applying for a new role. You research the organization thoroughly, prepare thoughtful answers, and present your most capable self in the meeting. You have done everything within your power. The reserve clause is the mental footnote you add as you walk out the door, a quiet if the fates will it. This does not diminish your effort, it honors it. Your self-worth remains anchored in the quality of your preparation and your courage to try, not in the final selection, which depends on countless variables you cannot influence. Your value was proven in the action itself, long before the outcome was ever known. What is one goal you are currently pursuing, and how can you apply the reserve clause to your efforts, committing fully to your part while releasing your grip on the final result? Much of our boundary confusion arises from a single, fundamental mistake, misplacing the very source of our value. The Stoics offer a clarifying filter for this exact dilemma with their concept of the indifferents. These are all the external circumstances we typically chase or fear, from our physical well-being and financial standing to our public reputation. The Stoics called them indifferent not because they do not matter, but because their presence or absence does not determine our moral worth, our core virtue. They are classified as either preferred, meaning it is natural to select them, like good health, or dispreferred, meaning we would naturally avoid them, like illness. Yet both categories remain external to our character. A core principle from the ancient texts reminds us that virtue is the only true good, and vice the only true evil, while everything else is simply material for our virtue to act upon. This distinction allows you to pursue external goals with ambition while keeping your self-esteem perfectly secure. You can wholeheartedly work toward that promotion, a preferred indifferent, without letting the final decision define you. Your worth is demonstrated through the virtuous character you bring to the effort, your diligence, your integrity, your fairness. Whether you receive the promotion or not, your honesty remains intact and valuable. Your integrity is the part that is truly you. List 3 indifferents you are currently highly invested in, perhaps your social media presence, your income, or a particular possession. Does their fluctuating status truly reflect on your unchangeable character? Your mind deserves a quiet moment to reflect at the end of every day. The Stoics developed a meaningful evening ritual for exactly this purpose, a practice Seneca called his daily review, where he would look back on the day's events and his own responses. He wrote that this is the time to ask yourself, what habit have you improved today? What challenge did you meet with patience? In what way are you growing? This is not about judgment, but about strengthening your inner compass through thoughtful awareness. It is a gentle space to consider how you applied your principles through the day's experiences. A simple structure makes this practice accessible. Find a quiet moment and ask yourself just 3 questions. First, where did I overlook the limits of my influence? Identify one instance where you placed emotional weight on a result that was not fully within your hands. Second, when did I accept a difficult thought without reflection? Pinpoint a moment where you took a concern or a critical view as fact before pausing to examine its truth. And third, did my choices support shared well-being? Reflect on whether your actions honored your core values and brought a constructive quality to your connections, or if they were simply a response to outside demands. This 5-minute review turns everyday experiences into stepping stones toward a more grounded and resilient you. It deepens your sense of purpose by showing you are actively participating in your own progress. Take 5 minutes tonight to look over your day with these 3 thoughtful questions and notice how this brief pause helps steady your path for tomorrow. Feeling isolated in our struggles can make our defenses brittle. We build walls not from strength, but from the fear that we are facing the world alone, and this very loneliness can weaken the boundaries we try so hard to maintain. The Stoics offered a powerful antidote to this sense of separation with their concept of Sympatheia, the profound understanding that the universe is a single, interconnected, and rational whole. This is not just a philosophical idea, it is a filter that can fundamentally reshape your sense of place and belonging. When you see yourself as an integral part of a vast, living system, the sharp edges of personal slights begin to soften, and your boundaries transform from a fortress against the world into a healthy, functioning part of the world itself. Marcus Aurelius reflected on this single harmony, writing that all things are intertwined with one another. A sacred bond unites them, and there is scarcely one thing that is disconnected from another. Your life, with all its unique challenges and joys, is a single note in a grand, cosmic symphony. Think of yourself as a single cell in a vast and healthy body. That cell has its own membrane, a necessary boundary that defines it and allows it to function properly. It does not see this membrane as a barrier against the body, but as the very structure that enables it to contribute to the body's overall health. Your personal boundaries are that membrane. They are not there to isolate you, but to allow you to engage with the whole from a place of integrity and strength. When someone speaks to you with frustration, you can filter that event through Sympatheia. Instead of receiving it as a targeted attack from a separate source, you can see it as a ripple of discord in the larger system, a signal of some disquiet in another part of the whole. This does not mean you accept poor treatment, but it changes your entire emotional response. You hold your boundary with compassion, understanding that the other person is also a part of this interconnected whole, acting from their own limited perspective. How does viewing your current challenges not as solitary burdens, but as part of a larger, universal process, change your relationship to them? Not every thought that enters your mind deserves a voice. In the constant noise of modern communication, silence stands as one of the most powerful and underused Stoic filters. This is not the silence of shyness or uncertainty, but a deliberate, strategic choice to withhold your words. It is an active demonstration of self-control that builds a clear boundary between your inner peace and the external pull of provocation or gossip. When you choose silence, you preserve your precious mental energy and refuse to be drawn into dramas that lie firmly outside your sphere of control. The founder of Stoicism, Zeno of Citium, placed immense value on this practice. He once noted that we have been given 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen more and speak less. This simple observation points to a profound truth, that true strength often lies in what you consciously decide not to say. Consider the last time you read a baiting comment online, crafted to provoke a reaction. The unfiltered impulse is to fire back a clever retort, to defend your position and win the argument. But in that moment, the Stoic filter asks you to pause. Is this exchange within my control? The other person's opinion is not. Their desire to argue is not. The only thing truly within your command is your choice to engage or to remain silent. By choosing silence, you are not conceding the point. You are making a powerful statement that your tranquility is not available for purchase at the price of a pointless debate. Your energy remains intact, your boundaries hold firm, and you have prevented an external event from dictating your internal state. When was the last time you spoke and immediately wished you had taken a breath instead? Can you recall a moment where your quiet restraint provided a clarity and strength that words never could? Clarity is the very first stone you lay when building a boundary. Without it, your mental energy spills out in every direction, trying to solve problems that were never yours to fix. A powerful way to create this clarity is through a practical exercise, one that makes the Stoic idea of control something you can see and touch. I want you to find a journal or a simple piece of paper. Draw two concentric circles, a smaller one inside a larger one. The inner circle is your sphere of control. This small, central space is for the things that are truly and entirely up to you. Your own judgments, your efforts, your values, and your choices. The outer, larger circle is your sphere of concern. This holds everything you care about but cannot command. The well-being of a loved one, the state of the economy, a friend's personal decisions, or the outcome of a project at work. Epictetus reminds us that our own pursuits and aversions are within our power. Everything else is not. The power of this exercise comes from literally writing these things down. Seeing them on paper creates a tangible filter for your attention. For example, you may be deeply concerned for a friend who is going through a difficult time. That genuine care belongs in your outer circle, your sphere of concern. It is natural and right to care, but what belongs in your inner circle, your sphere of control? You can control your offer to listen. You can control sending a kind message. You can control your own compassion. Their ultimate well-being, however, their choices and their emotional journey resides firmly in the outer ring. By drawing this distinction, you free yourself from the exhausting burden of trying to control their path. You focus your energy where it can actually make a difference, your own supportive actions. Take a moment right now to draw your own spheres. Look at the items you have placed in your large outer circle of concern. What one item will you consciously move from a source of anxiety to a simple, peaceful acknowledgement that it rests outside your command? Your mind needs a workshop, a quiet space where the raw materials of daily experience can be shaped by your principles. This is the enduring role of Stoic journaling, a continuous filtering process where you actively strengthen your mental perspective. The simple act of writing encourages fleeting thoughts and reactive feelings to settle, giving you the space to examine them with the clarity of a craftsman. It is here on the page that you move from passively receiving events to actively interpreting them through your chosen filters. You transform a frustrating interaction into a case study for the dichotomy of control. You turn a personal disappointment into an opportunity to practice Amor Fati. Marcus Aurelius himself never intended his meditations for publication. It was his private journal, a relentless workshop where he forged his resilience against the immense pressures of leading an empire. He was constantly writing to remind himself of his own principles, filtering the complexity of his world through the steady lens of his philosophy. To begin this practice, you need no elaborate system. A simple 4-question template can serve as your daily filter. First, what happened? A plain description of the event. Second, what was truly within my control in that situation? Third, how did I use or fail to use my Stoic tools? And fourth, how can I improve my response tomorrow? Over time, this journal becomes more than a record. It becomes tangible proof of your growth. You can look back and see how a challenge that once would have unsettled you for days is now met with a calm you consciously built. This documented progress is a deep, internal source of self-worth, completely independent of external validation. What is one recurring challenge you could gain profound clarity on by committing to write about it for just 5 minutes each day? A sharp critique can feel like a breach in your personal walls, a direct challenge to your competence and value. This is where your practiced filters become essential, transforming that initial sting into a moment of deliberate choice. First, apply the dichotomy of control. Their words and their opinion of you are external events entirely outside your command. What remains firmly within your circle of power is your judgment of their words and the character of your response. This simple separation is your primary shield. Next, engage the discipline of assent. Do not immediately accept the criticism as absolute truth. Instead, pause and examine the impression. Is any part of this accurate? Is there a kernel of information here that could be useful for my growth? You are not required to accept the entire package, only to sift through it for anything that serves your progress. Finally, pull back with the view from above. See this single moment of feedback within the grand tapestry of your entire life. This is one perspective, one data point among countless others. From this vantage point, its weight diminishes, allowing you to hold it more lightly. Epictetus offered characteristically direct advice on this matter, stating that if someone tells you that so and so speaks ill of you, do not defend yourself against the charges, but reply, "He must not know my other faults, or he would not have mentioned only these." Imagine receiving a performance review that highlights areas for improvement. The unfiltered reaction might be defensiveness or a sinking feeling, but with your Stoic tools, you process it differently. You acknowledge the reviewer's perspective is not yours to control. You then assent only to the specific, actionable points you can use to refine your skills, letting the rest of the commentary, especially any generalized judgments, fall away. And you see this review not as a final verdict, but as a single document in the long story of your career. Recall a recent criticism you received. Run it through these three filters right now. What is the residue of useful truth you can act upon, and what can you consciously release back into the world, no longer allowing it to occupy your mind? A calm harbor is not the absence of wind, but a place where the waters remain still. The Stoics called this state Apatheia, a profound inner tranquility that is often misunderstood as cold indifference. This is not about shutting down your feelings or becoming numb to the world. It is about achieving a clear-minded freedom from the irrational and overwhelming passions that so often breach our mental walls. Apatheia is the final result of all your filtering work, a state of self-possession where your judgments are no longer carried away by storms of rage, gnawing envy, or paralyzing fear. These powerful emotions are the primary disruptors of our inner boundaries, convincing us that our worth is under challenge and that we must react from a place of urgency. Seneca described the ideal sage as being free from this kind of passion, undisturbed by any hardship, rising above all that troubles or commands. The critical distinction lies not in whether you feel the initial sting of anger, but in whether you allow that feeling to consume you and dictate your actions. Feeling a flash of frustration when someone treats you unfairly is a human response. Being consumed by that frustration, letting it simmer into a grudge that colors your entire week, is the passion from which Apatheia offers liberation. The underlying judgment that fuels such a passion is often a story we tell ourselves, a belief that this situation should not be happening to me, or that this person's action has the power to diminish my standing. When you filter that initial impression, you challenge the story. You recognize that another person's poor behavior is a reflection of their own state, not a verdict on your value. This calm clarity is the ultimate expression of self-worth, a deep knowing that your peace is your most guarded possession. What is one passion that most frequently disturbs your peace, and what is the underlying judgment you suspect is fueling its fire? The alarm clock rings not as an intrusion, but as your first invitation to practice. Before your feet even touch the floor, you recall the idea of remembering our shared human journey. This day is a gift with a finite number of hours, a truth that instantly clarifies your priorities. You decide not to spend your morning scrolling through a digital feed of other people's highlights, a drain on your peace that lies outside your inner circle. Instead, you choose 5 minutes of quiet, affirming that your time is too valuable to give away before you have even begun. As you prepare for the day, you mentally draw your spheres of control. Your effort, your attitude, your integrity belong in the center. The traffic, your boss's mood, the unpredictable events of the afternoon are placed firmly in the larger circle of concern. This simple mental map is your blueprint for the day ahead. During your commute, another driver makes a careless maneuver. Your body tenses, a sharp retort forms in your mind. This is the critical moment for the Stoic pause. You take one conscious breath, creating the space for the discipline of assent to engage. You observe the initial impression of frustration without endorsing it. You recognize the other driver's action as an external event, entirely outside your command. Your pulse slows as you reclaim the only thing that is truly yours, your calm and reasoned continuation of the journey. At work, you receive an email that feels unfairly critical. The old, unfiltered reaction would be to internalize the message as a verdict on your worth. Now you apply your tools in sequence. First, the dichotomy of control. The other person's opinion is not yours to manage. Second, cognitive distancing. You note, I am having the thought that this feedback defines me, and you hold that story at a gentle distance. Finally, you sift the response for any useful kernel you can act upon, releasing the rest. Your inner citadel remains undisturbed. Later, a carefully planned project meets an unexpected obstacle, a genuine challenge. The initial wave of disappointment is real, but it is followed quickly by the practiced filter of embracing what unfolds. You consciously accept this new reality. This obstacle is now the path. You ask, how does this situation advance the action? And you begin to see the hidden opportunities it presents, perhaps a chance to collaborate differently or to develop a skill you had neglected. The challenge is woven into the fabric of your day, no longer a tear but a new thread. As evening falls, you sit with your journal for the daily review. You ask the 3 questions. Where did I place my energy outside my sphere of control today? When did I accept a thought without examination? Did my actions align with my core values? This is not an exercise in self-judgment, but in compassionate awareness, a way to strengthen your filters for tomorrow. From the morning's intentional start to the evening's reflective close, each filter worked in concert, not to build walls against the world, but to help you move through it with unshakable self-possession. As you go through your tomorrow, which one Stoic filter will you commit to using with full awareness? Stoic filtering methods offer a complete system for safeguarding your inner world and reinforcing your inherent self-worth. These are not abstract ideas to be admired, but practical tools for daily engagement, from the foundational dichotomy of control to the ultimate embrace of Amor Fati. Each practice serves as a conscious choice, a mental sieve that protects your peace from the chaos you cannot command while empowering the responses you can. This entire framework culminates in a simple, profound truth from Marcus Aurelius, who noted that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Your reality is colored by the filters you consistently apply. The world does not define your inner landscape, your practiced judgments do. The most powerful step is always the first one, taken not with grand ambition but with quiet consistency. Choose just one filter to practice tomorrow, perhaps the Stoic pause before replying to a message or the nightly review of your spheres. Let that single practice become your anchor. As you move forward, we would be honored to hear from you. In the comments below, share which Stoic filter you found most impactful in your own reflections. Your insight builds a community of shared growth, reminding each of us that we are not alone in the journey toward a more resilient and self-possessed life.